Welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast. Chris and Stephen here from the Purple Mountain, all the way in sunny Fleetwood. Welcome, Chris. Our guest is Chris Stevenson today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Amazing. We're going to do an amazing podcast today, all about energy disturbances, everything to do with energy. And we'd like to start the podcast with this first question. Is why are we doing this podcast? Why are you so passionate about it?
Well, it's something that seems to come up all the time. We've been involved in this type of work and been very privileged to be around experienced people as well.
Yeah.
And really what the subject that keeps coming up is where we get messages from those who want to connect with us at the Purple Mountain, or when we're connecting elsewhere, other places, about disturbances in the home.
Yeah.
And it's something that has become entwined in our work a little bit as well, in the things we've learned through doing our own inner work, that now we feel sharing with other people is very valuable. And I don't want to encroach on your questions, but really for me is what a lot of the core of what we're going to be talking about, and what will be in answer to these questions, is self-empowerment. And stepping into the I am power, which those might be familiar with. Even a guest of ours, Pauline, talks about it. Pauline Turner, who did the podcast with us a few podcasts ago. So I'm not going to disturb the host anymore. I'm going to
so we've been receiving over the years a lot of inboxes, and you've been responding to these inboxes, and people been coming to you and asking, there's things going off in the home. So what kind of things have these people been mentioning? So give us sort of some examples, some things that might be happening in a home.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. So we're talking about, when we talk about energetic disturbances, people picking up like perhaps a presence of the spirit there that might be there. Things being moved in the home, people being woken up at night very suddenly. If it quite often it can center around one particular person or one particular room. Just a feeling of something feeling a bit out of place or not quite right in the home. It can be funny smells or something that's occurring in the life as well.
Yeah, and that happens quite a bit, doesn't it, in the energetic disturbances? And that can be really unsettling for people as well, can't it?
Quite often people message us, in all fairness, or reach out to any medium, psychic or energy workers because at the end of the tether. They're probably lacking sleep, or they're getting, they don't know what to do. They don't have the tools to be able to resolve whatever is happening in the home.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think when we talk about our own personal experiences, that can be really useful to the listener as well, because there's something that you experienced within your own bedroom as well not long ago. Oh. So that'll be great to talk a little bit about that and how you empowered yourself in that little story.
Yeah, not really just good. There, but this is why we know these things, not just because we've sat there and read a book or had a chat around a table. We've experienced them firsthand, haven't we? And that's how you know what's what, through experiencing things firsthand. So I've experienced this. I've experienced it in other homes and different types of experiences. And what we have to remember is, through these things, that your home's your sanctuary. First of all, it's your space. It's like a castle. So that is your energetic space. So it's very important to be mindful of what we welcome into that space, be that people in the physical who carry different energies, the energy we bring in, keeping it clean and cleansed around the space as well is really important, but I'm sure we'll get to that. But I had a recent experience where I was actually clearing quite a bit of clutter out of one of my rooms, and I'd had a few disturbed night's sleep. And really what I came to is, I'd done some sort of clearing in that room, but really I spoke out loud in the end, and I just said, look, if this doesn't stop, I won't be staying in this room anymore. I'll be going. and I said it very clearly, and certainly not in an angry way, but just put a boundary up. And it went actually in line with, I was having a big clear out in that room, clearing things that I didn't need anymore, items that I didn't need anymore. And the energy's completely changed in it as well. So you can also discover that in your home, perhaps when you're impressed to decorate. This isn't just about physical wants and needs. Sometimes you might be feeling the need for an energetic shift, clearing the clutter out of a room, redecorating different colours. You're bringing a different energy and you're changing the energy.
Absolutely. And it's something that we both came to really fully understand quite a few years ago when we talk about feng shui. We talk about the importance of energy within the home. So when we hold on to clutter and we hold on to that energy, what happens to the space then? What does it become? Does that then attract lower frequencies?
Well, as well, what I recognised when I was doing that work was some things that have been gifted to me over the years, and not to say they have a negative energy on them or anything like that, but they were attached to memories of the past as well that I didn't need anymore.
That's a really good point, that, yeah.
So in a way, you hold on to the past with certain things, and I recognise that I've been holding on to certain energies and certain items that I didn't need anymore. So in getting rid of them, that was a cleansing within itself.
And it's important to say as well, when we're delving deep into the energetic disturbances, we're not just talking about negative energies or bad energies. We're just talking about energies that we carry.
No, this is well, because there's a lot of facets to this subject, but really, I really don't want to get too much into what I think other people shouldn't or shouldn't be doing in terms of people who might visit your home to do house clearances. I'm not here to judge anyone, but I'm here to say what I feel in my knowing is the way forward. And the way forward with anything is, and I would say to anybody listening to this, anything you've got going on, you are more than capable of sorting it, of resolving it within yourself. You might need some advice. Of course, we all need to reach out to people who have had experience of these things. But ultimately, what you find quite often is, and we found this in the past in the early doors when we did a house clearance for somebody, and they were living in a flat and they were in a really desperate situation, not sleeping. And we actually went in, we spent the whole morning there. The flat was untidy to begin with, really untidy. So we helped them tidy things up. We did some smudging, we did some healing, we did some meditation. And that night, that person said, I've never slept so well. It was wonderful. A week later, one of our team at the time went back to visit that person, and it was exactly the same. And it really, I feel it was because that person hadn't took the decision to do it themselves. They knew what needed to be done. So you can get help, you can get assistance, 100%, and those with more experience. But ultimately, by you doing it yourself, it's your energy, it's your space, it's your intention.
You have to, in a way, have a want and a desire to change. You really want to look within, and this is a lot I work at the Purple Mountain, is to empower people to empower themselves.
Yeah, it's very much like, I was thinking about this morning, knowing we were doing this podcast, and really it's a lot like doing the inner work on yourself. Imagine it in your home. It's like doing the inner work. The answers don't lie on the outside. The answer somewhere is in the home. That's where the answer is.
And often within yourself, within the person, isn't it?
And hopefully we'll get to that, the many different facets, because the first thing I will do if anybody messages me, I'm having disturbances, what can you do? They're normally very, very anxious for somebody to go around to the house. And the first thing I'll say is I'll send some questions. What's happening? What time is it happening? What are you feeling? How's it affecting you? So we're starting to break things down and say, what is really happening? Because like we do with the inner work, you can go into a story.
Yeah.
And the story isn't, we need facts, right? What's happening? What are you feeling? So quite often when you get down to what you're feeling, people say, well, actually, it doesn't feel anything bad at all. Oh, right. Then we know it's just an energy that's around that we might be unsure about what it is, but we know we don't feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So already you've took a step in what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And it's also trying to empower people to discern, the difference? Because sometimes it could be loved ones. Do you think that could happen
100%.
as well? Loved ones coming in, trying to make themselves aware around that person.
Could be where somebody in the house is having, for lack of a better word, a bit of a spiritual awakening, where they're opening up to spirit. That can be it. Sometimes, which we've discussed before, we can be too open. That's another boundary.
We're going to talk about that later on.
That'll come in. So there's a lot of different facets. It can be centering on one person in the house. It can also center around if somebody's having mental health or emotional issues. Not insinuating they're making it up. What I'm trying to say with that is that energy that they're feeling, everything is light for light, so it will attract that. The same as if we had rubbish and bin bags all over the house and our bins overflowing, what is that energy going to attract? Even we've done work in the past with people who have had problems like with the sewage system in the house. So the house isn't smelling good. What the energy, that's not going to attract a great energy, is it?
Yeah, and I think anybody listening to the podcast, really, anybody that wants to understand what energetic disturbances is, just see everything as energy.
Yeah.
But, energy can be both light or dark or light or love or whatever it is. And we as human beings, we're great attracted to that energy as well, aren't we?
100%. So it's, and step back and look at the picture. Try not to get too lost or give a great power. Oh my God, I'm being terrorized by, we are all powerful beings of light. And sometimes we have to stand our ground. We're not fighting anything. We're not using anger or aggression or any of this nonsense you see out there. It's not the Ghostbusters. It's
very,
not the
very
way
spot on. Yeah.
What we're doing is we're making it very clear, even to if we are talking spirit-wise, if there is somebody perhaps even that lives in the house that has before, which is very, very common.
Yeah.
And just coming back to visit the house, just say, I'm sorry, you're disturbing the energy in this house. You need to move on. Just ask with great love and respect. It's time to move on. This is our home now. And so you're doing it in the right way, power of intention and speaking out loud, which to me is the 9 times out of 10 that works.
Brilliant. I think that's really good advice. It's something that we learned a long time ago. And why is it important to sort of speak out loud then too? So you're in a room and you found out in your facts that it's maybe the front room or the kitchen that has the most disturbances. And that might be for a reason. There might be spirit there that has attracted itself or anchored itself there. So why is it important to speak out loud?
Well, it's the power of the voice. And that's one of your most powerful tools. And really, sometimes you can go around the house 15 times smudging if there's no intention behind it. So the voice amplifies the power of intention. It's one of the most powerful tools we have. And there is a way of being very authoritative without being angry. So we're using the voice, we're tapping into our I am power. This is my home.
Yeah.
We're not having this. We don't welcome this type of energy in. That's very, very simple. But also sometimes this can needed to be dealt with on and the physical as well. For example, there might be somebody in the house that's tapping into energies or doing something that's opening something up. So that's sometimes where we need to identify that as well, because how many times have we heard, I moved and we've still got the same problem?
Absolutely. and this is why, going back to the point you were saying before with it's no good for people to go round. It's not the person that's going around, the medium, the psychic, clearing it. It's not their home. And this is why it's important to empower the homeowner or the family to do the work, because it's their home, it's their energy.
Yeah, for me, as I feel right now, with the experience I've had, a house visit would be the very, very last resort. In fact, I haven't been to anybody's home in years, and I've dealt with a lot of inquiries I actually find that people are kind of glowing after because they know they've done it themselves. They've tapped into the knowing. So wherever they go, they think, if that comes again, I know exactly how to deal with it and I'll recognize it.
So what kind of the language? I mean, we've had people in the past that have got angry with spirit. And what does that do with the energy when we react to that
Like
energy?
for like, it's going to attract anger. It's going to attract. That's what we're putting out. It's going to be like for like. I would not say to anybody to ever speak in anger. You can be authoritative. You don't, and certainly don't beg anything. You are working with your own energy, but don't be angry. Don't, it's not forcing anything. You're standing in your power. You're working with unconditional love. Like, that's really important.
Yeah. So where do as we're empowering someone to clear that own energy, does that happen straight away, or does that can maybe happen after a couple of sessions, after a couple of days? How quickly does that happen?
I'm glad you asked this, and I'm going to use a recent example of somebody that messaged me, and I gave them what I will do after I've sent those questions in. I'll sit with it for a while, and then I'll send a step-by-step program, which is their choice to use or not.
Yeah.
Normally the step-by-step program involves, unless I know really deep details, it'll be something along the lines of, like we've said, keeping the house clean. Another one is keeping the curtains open, plenty of light coming in, plenty of fresh air, doing smudging every day, starting at the front door, but with intention and prayer as well, which prayer, very simply, it's not the religious aspect of prayer, but speaking from the heart. Any energies that do not belong here, I do not accept them, and I send them back with unconditional love. Always with unconditional love, because we're not fighting fire with fire. And there might be a couple of other steps that are also tailored to that individual person. I sometimes encourage people to play music around the house.
Very powerful.
To lift the vibrations as well. And what I will say to that person is, try this for 1 week and get back to me. And actually, I did that the other week, and that person never got back to me. So I thought, oh, it's sorted.
It's sorted.
It's sorted.
So where can we ask guides and doorkeepers to step in? Where is the self-responsibility in that? Because you mentioned, and we were diving into this quite in depth in a lot of our other work of what we call connecting. And I think you're absolutely right. The first step is to always empower self. But where is your guides? Why is this allowed to happen?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you have a choice what you let in your door and you don't. And I actually feel, I was thinking about it when you were saying it then, and I'm thinking, I could just get a picture of our guide stood there and saying, I can't interfere. This is a lesson you've chosen.
You come to experience.
So they're there if they're needed, 100%. Nobody's gone anywhere. But they're like, you've let something in. It can be somebody you've invited into your home. It can even be where you're harboring something, where you've had a disagreement with somebody and you're harboring a grudge. And that energetic feeling, this is where people we've talked about psychic attacks before, which is another subject. But this is the power of letting things go as well and not bringing them into the home. You know, if you've had a crap day at work, either leave it at the door, or as soon as you get in, speak with your partner, your friend, or give somebody a call, let it off and leave it at work. Because you're going to bring that in with you, and then it's going to affect your space and how you're living and your well-being.
Do you remember one of the first, we were talking about this 20 odd years ago, and we were in Circle, and one of the ladies who got us into this work, Anita and Roy, and they said a really good simple technique is the waterfall technique. So would you let everybody know a little bit what they can do then?
In sort of protection is a good one, and you can use this either way, which is if you envisage a waterfall of light by your front door, and that you're walking through it as you leave, and it coats you as you go about your day in that light. But also you can use it, envisage it as people are coming into the home, so it's almost like a spiritual car wash in a way. So you're sort of cleaning people off. But also, it's something myself and you, Stephen, are very mindful of, is it's to be mindful of, you do allow in your home. I can't say it enough, your home is your sanctuary.
Absolutely.
It's really important, and touching on it as well, those who have pets as well will pick up on energy very quickly. Very, very quickly.
So you saying that, whatever is going on in the home is allowed to happen because you've allowed it. So it's very empowering as well, isn't it, when you step into that I am power, and you know that there is doorkeepers there to assist you as well.
What's important is don't step into the victim mentality.
That's really important.
Oh my God, this is happening to me. Oh my God, this awful force is ruining my life. Who's going to come and rescue me? what will happen then is not only will it continue and you're giving it a ton of power, amplified it, but then you could probably going to get somebody coming through the door who quite possibly isn't too attuned with what they're doing and thinking they're going to come in and clear your house and make everything perfect for you. So wherever we put ourselves in that victim state in any part of life, then the rescuer will appear then, won't they?
Absolutely.
And then we and I had that in a sort of case, we'll call it a case, last year. And then they got very angry with the medium who came. And I thought, well, you're all playing into each other's stuff here. That's what's going on.
A lot of projections.
And as soon as I put that, actually, in the nicest way, because I'll always just be clear and respectful, but always get the truth if you ask. And when I put it to that and said, look, you need to let it go. It's not that person that's visited your house. This is the big picture. That was the end of that. I didn't hear anything because they didn't want to let it go. So it could carry on.
Comes down to your intentions. But I just want to move away from that a little bit by the empowering side, which I think is really, really important part of this podcast, and really empowering people and never underestimating people's own awareness
100%.
and trust in their own feelings.
Don't underestimate your own awareness. I'll say that to anybody listening. Do not underestimate it. You've got all the tools you need. We all have the power of intuition, and that intuition is always there no matter how we're feeling. It might be a bit quieter, but you just get that feeling something's not right. So ask yourself, if something is going on, how does it feel? How does it feel? What is happening? And you'll know through your intuition, intuitively, this is really plays into feng shui. How many times do people look in the home and go, don't know what it is, but that's just not right the way it is. It feels squashed. Oh, we'll change the front room around. Oh, it feels different. The energy feels different. I don't know why it is something doesn't feel right. I'm going to do a bit of smudging. I'm going to put some crystals out. And they're all wonderful tools. They really are. But just knowing that your home's your sanctuary. The other one is putting salt around your house as well, which is very, very effective.
So how does that work then? You mentioned about the salt. How would you talk about just the front door, or
you could do just the front door, the entrance. If you live in a flat or something like that, you could put it in a little pot by the door as well. There's always a way to do things like feng shui. There's always a way that we can find, but it's the way that suits right for you. Because what you have to be very careful of, these are all wonderful tools to use. Absolutely, the sage, incense sticks. Candles, even crystals, and there are many other things you can use as well. But it ultimately is your intuition is your most powerful tool that you have.
It'll navigate you through.
And the voice, the power of the voice, are saying, we're not working with this energy, and it may even be something that's coming up with yourself. If you look, we hoover our floors, we wipe things, we clean things in our home. And that's very much with us as we go through different emotions. We're constantly building up. We're like, if you imagine like your hoovers and our bag gets full. And then, so if we've had a bad week or a bit depressed, that energy is going to be in the home. So that might be part of it, where it just needs a bit of a cleanse. The doors need opening, a bit of music, out with the old, in with the new, and clearing things. So actually doing it all the time is really good, like a spring clean, like an energetic spring clean.
So you talk quite in depth, which is really good advice for people listening to the podcast, things in the external, in the house, in the home, candles and crystals and things like that, smudging. But often you're delving into it now, Chris, in your own experience, a lot of it can be within the home owner or the family member, the partner, the child that carries the energy. So what can they do within themselves? Is there things like meditation?
Well, there's two parts to this.
Okay.
The first part is we'll say we're dealing with somebody, I'm having problems in the house, right? We've been through everything and I found, it's me. I'm going through a bit of something. It's actually me. I would advise that person meditation, perhaps seek out energy healer, somebody that you can do some deep auric work with and do that if you're willing. It may be somebody else in the house as well, partner, children, some flatmate, whichever. But wherever it is, there has to be a willingness. Otherwise, that cycle, sometimes, it's not about particularly solving the problem, but maybe what comes to light is somebody's been going through a bit of a tough time and they've kept it to themselves.
Yeah.
So you get together as a family or whichever in the house, and you end up having a discussion that's really productive, and that just removes that cloud that's been hanging around.
And it's important to remember that a loved one's not going to come through to try to scare you or frighten you.
Yeah.
I want to move away now a little bit from more the heavier side of the disturbance and going into an important question a lot of people ask me as well, Chris, is why do a lot of energetic disturbances happen at night time?
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure I don't claim to know all the answers to everything. I'm just speaking from experience. But it's interesting because if you think about it at night, especially the world we live in, it's one of the few times we stop and we're still.
Yeah.
When our brain's not working, it's not on our phones or thinking about something or listening to something. So we're actually stopping still, aren't we, in that time? So it is quite a good time often for spirit to draw close. But it's just important, again, with any sort of boundaries, myself and you working in our sort of clairvoyant side. And I think you're the same as me. After I've done a demonstration, I'll always show great gratitude when I come home in every way. But that brings things to a close. That's my work done for the night. And I need my sleep now. I need my rest. So anybody that says to me, "Oh God, I've got spirit shaking me in the night," and they want to tell me all sorts, I think straight away, no boundaries. And if you got no boundaries, of course that's going to happen. 100%. If we would say, welcome in, what's going to happen?
They're just going to come in.
Yeah, and we laughed about it recently in one of our circles. And a friend of ours said that we laughed about it after, and it was a lesson where it's remembering we don't work for spirit. We are connected. We are spirit. We're all connected. We're all equal. Really important.
We work with spirit, and this is really important. Anybody listening to the podcast that is doing any kind of spiritual work, and it is so exciting, isn't it? When you're starting off and you want to connect and you want to read and you want to connect, but it is so important it's not about closing down as such. It's about having those boundaries in place, because spirit will wake you up during the night.
I agree.
And they will draw in and you will open those portals.
You made a good point there. It's not about closing down. You're not closing down anything. And I had this discussion yesterday with somebody I did a reading for, where they said, "Oh, I'm not sure if my guide's always close." And I said, "Well, you'd know it if they weren't there. If they were to really pull back, then you would know." But yeah, it's straight away what I think it comes down to is boundaries in all parts of life, with ourselves, with the outer, with the inner. We have to have boundaries. And that's what we're talking about with things happening in any way within the home, is keeping a healthy boundary, because our home is the place where we regenerate, where we rest as well, where we do our important work.
Yeah. But you have also on the other side, and we read a lot with clients, you and I, Chris, and a big sort of thing that comes up, and it's not as much as an energetic disturbance when you have loved ones and even pets sitting at the edge of the bed and they feel that. So that's not really a negative disturbance. That's just, what are they doing then?
And this is what can happen quite often. I talked about it earlier when we said, "Oh, what energy are you feeling?" "Oh, it feels quite nice, actually." "Oh, and they'll come back and go, "Oh, I think it's my granddad." "Oh, but I can't do this." So you can.
They disempower themselves straight away.
So
don't they?
It can be actually a big realization to go, "Oh, that's it." And once they recognize that energy, "Oh, I'm not," because sometimes we can get defensive, thinking, "Oh, it's something bad," and it isn't. It can be,
the smell of tobacco smoke, or the feeling, and opens them up. Because I always say as well, Chris, that is not as much about connecting, because loved ones are around us all the time. It's that for some reason, the person's tuning into that frequency, and that 100%. Must be for a reason as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're having a bit of an opening, or something's happening personally for them.
So the loved one is trying to contact them, not trying to scare them.
They're going like,
panicking, and there's your mum or your dad laughing, saying, "Oh, might have drawn too close." So I want to move away a little bit on people moving into a new house.
Yeah.
What kind of sort of technique would you advise? So I've just bought a house, and there might have been an old lady there that's still in spirit, and this is her house, and you're coming in.
Well,
what kind of advisement would you give?
The first thing I want to say is items that don't belong with you. And this goes the same for anybody and not that there's anything wrong with this, if you get things secondhand or from charity shops, things like that, it's very important that you feel the energy that's on them and sort of cleanse them before they come into the home. And again, not to say there's anything bad, but it is an energy that isn't yours.
Yeah.
So anything that isn't yours in that home could do with going, I'd say, straight away.
Or cleansing or cleaning.
To do a good cleanse in there. Quite a lot of people, funnily enough, this is where we do things instinctively. What's the first thing they do when they move in a house? You tell me.
First thing when they move into a house, new carpets.
They'll clean it. They'll clean it.
Yeah.
They'll even if it doesn't need decorating, they'll probably change the colours on the walls. So we're shifting and changing the energy, and sometimes that can take a little bit of time. This is why moving can be very challenging. For us, even if we're moving into our dream home, because we imagine that shift of energy. And we're taking all our belongings and changing that. Yeah.
So also, when we talk about decorating, the energy can be negative, residual energy can be stored in the bricks, in the foundations of the house as well.
Can't it? And that was mentioned on a previous podcast that we did with Pauline.
Yes.
Really interesting. So you can have the energy coming in of, a big smile on my face, but underneath it, there can be, I'm really angry with you. And that can be put in, that's going in. So it's again.
Do you talk about in like the foundations of the property? In the
foundations, and there are ways of removing that as well. The use of colour that's been mentioned on previous podcasts. And once we recognise that energy, once we recognise where it is, a very good thing to use as well, not only salt, but the Himalayan salt lamps as well. They're excellent to have in your home. And also things like black obsidian. But again, not going overboard with these energies. It's very important, for example, not to have too many strong energy crystals in your bedroom, because that could disturb your sleep as well. So, and
again, anybody listening to the podcast, just see everything as vibration and energy, and everything that you have in your room has to have a meaning and a purpose, even where you put your bed, how you design your bedroom, which is your sleeping sort of state. And it's not always spirit that create the disturbances. No. It might be the wrong energy that you.
If you're going to go into a room and paint it black and keep the curtain shut every day, what's it going to be like?
Not a very high vibration.
Yeah. If you're going to, this is why it is important. This is why not everybody agrees with curtains and blinds and things, because it's very important for that natural light to be brought in. Yeah. For the windows to be open, it creates movement of air. Yeah.
The other kind of things that I don't think we've touched on yet is the importance of plants.
Yeah.
As well.
Plants, excellent for the home. Not only wonderful oxygenators, so they're bringing the cleanse in the air, is also their energy. And what come to mind also is that with sound is bells as well. Things like chimes and bells are excellent to have in the home. They're really good in feng shui as well for that.
Amazing. And what's your thoughts on pets act very strange sometimes as well? Dogs and cats, when you've got in the house, when there's disturbances that happen, they are really good detectors of energy as well.
You had this recently, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder that sometimes when our animals are very active at night, that they're doing their work as well. Some of our animals can clear that energy, detect that energy,
And they're good protectors as well of that energy as well.
Guardians.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I think the podcast so far and the stuff that's coming through is going to be really nourishing and really helpful for people.
Well, hopefully that's what it's about. It's about helping people just to understand, just to look at it from another perspective, to know, you can do these things. And really, you can do these things even if you don't feel there's an issue.
Yeah.
They're good practices to do. And you might be listening to this saying, "Oh, do that already. Fantastic. We do a lot of things without knowing." And that's wonderful as well.
So if there are disturbances that are happening, not negative ones, and there's grandma, there's mum, there's dad, even a pet trying to draw close and make themselves aware around the person in the physical, we talked a little bit about meditation. What kind of advisement would you give the client, the person in the home? Should they seek a reading to maybe, or do you think they should heed maybe the messages that they're trying to connect with?
I was thinking about this before when you mentioned it, and I would say if that was the case, I would seek out somebody that you resonate with to receive. The word I'd use, actually, it might not always be a reading, it might be some form of spiritual counsel, somebody who has that experience, intuition, that connection with spirit. Sometimes we do need that clarification from somebody else, just to confirm our inner knowing a little bit. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Perhaps you feel, if you're having a bit of a calling, that you'd like to visit your local spiritual centre, and sit in an open circle, discuss with like-minded people about these things, and you might find that people are having similar experiences, things they've dealt with already. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with reaching out to other people who've got the experience, or connecting with like-minded people, or seeking a spiritual counsel through a reading, or energy worker, healer.
And it sort of helps the person really open up to spirit, isn't it? And I think that's probably why maybe a loved one's is drawing close to, maybe to give them comfort. Do you feel, just to remind them that they're not on their own? Again, that's a big thing at the moment.
Might be something going on, and I feel like I've repeated this a lot in readings lately. Is sometimes we have a perception as human beings that our guides, our loved ones, do a runner when things happen, when actually that's when they're needed the very most. That's when they're there. That's when they're trying to support us, let us know you're not on your own. And maybe just even that hand on the shoulder saying, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. You might not see it. So they come close when they're very much needed.
Yeah. And again, empowering people that if things are a little bit too much, even when it comes to the spirit connection, you always say, can you just take a step back?
Can you take a step back? It's too much.
We've had that in circles as well, haven't we?
It's disturbing my sleep. This is a little bit too much for me. Can we take a step back? And
and it comes down to your boundaries again.
And also the big one is, be careful what you ask for. Because if you ask for it, it will come. You say, "Oh, I want to have an experience. I want to do this," and it's like, "Whoa, you have an experience. You've had that, I know,
many times earlier on." And I very quickly realised, Chris, be careful what you ask for. And I said, "I want to hear spirit. I want to see spirit," and it was happening when we lived together. And I ran upstairs under my quilt, as if that was going to help anyway. But then also I understand now, you don't always understand the reasons when things happen, is that there's part of my subconscious that wanted to experience those things. And they've not always been pleasant. And we don't want to go into the dark side. That's not what this podcast is about, but it's part of the experience.
Well, you make a good point. When we experience, we learn it's part of what we're here for. So the other side to look at it, which again assists in taking us out of the victim mentality, is whatever I'm experiencing, I might not understand it now, but it is for my highest good. Really. Now, the other side you get is that I just want to touch on before we sort of complete the heavier side of the discussion, as we close that up, is that there are those who like it as well.
I find that so strange.
So you find it's not changing because they like it that way. It's a very small minority, but that can happen as well. So just be aware of that. Anybody, when you are perhaps experiencing with other people, you're trying to assist in the home, that sometimes there's not always that intention of changing it.
But that can be a little bit difficult, I think, and I feel, and I just wonder what your thoughts on this was, that if you're dad and mum and you've got 3 older kids that living in the house or whatever age, and one of the children is the instigator of that energy, that portal, where is the self-responsibility there? How can you, as a parent who is very receptive and very open to these energies, do we bring the family together?
Together. together's always the way. Together's always.
What happens if the child likes the way they want like it?
Just try and help, and I think it would be a little bit different. Not to what's the word, patronise anybody, a little bit different with the child, because maybe a bit of understanding, maybe something's lacking there, maybe there's something going on at school, for example. Everything's got a root. Everything's got a root, and what we do is, if there's a root to something, there's this story that then gets created, and you'll hear this and, I want to talk about this. No, let's cut this down. What is actually happening? That's the best thing to do. That's the best advice.
So being curious is really what gives us the answers.
Well, yeah, and drawing it back to simplicity. Spirit always used to say to us, is it as bad as you thought it was? And I think they made a very good point, because I think we add to it. And then go, oh my God, the story. And then if we cut it back and go, right, what's actually happening? When's it happening? What do I want to do about it? Let's sort this out. But if you are part of something that's going on, it's going to go as far as you want it to go before it comes to a stop, like with any situation in life.
What just came back to me, moving on a little bit from that discussion, is when we used to run our health and wellbeing shop, our gift shop on Fleetwood Market, and used to encounter a lot of parents who used to bring their young children into the shop. I said, oh, there's something wrong with my child.
Yeah.
They're connecting with spirit and it's frightening me. How can you stop it? So anybody listening who's got young children who are very highly sensitive to spirit, what advisement could you give to parents?
Well, it's a very different subject, this, and we did get a lot of children on our stall on the market. Quite often they would go to the crystals like they just knew them, and it used to tickle me in the nicest way when I would get parents coming and saying, I think my child's got the gift, give them a few years. And it's like, they're connected with spirit more as a child. We lose it as we grow and we go through the system of things and our experiences in life, that we dumb down that we're actually very connected to spirit as a child. And how many children have imaginary friends? You know,
is that healthy? Is that good? Is that bad?
I think they're just very connected with spirit, and especially now for me, particularly, you could probably go the last, definitely since the last 10 years, maybe more, maybe a little bit more. I would say any child now is they're coming in on a very high vibration. That's why a lot of the systems that we have in place struggle to understand them. And it's not the child not understanding the system, it's the system doesn't understand the child.
And then the system's trying to change the child.
Or put a label on it because we don't understand. So it's like,
and really,
it's moving very quickly, a high sensitivity, a high moving through subject matter very quick, being able to take on a lot of information at one time. But they're very, very connected with spirit.
So, you know, obviously drawing it to the energetic side, obviously at home with a child, that really as a parent, the best thing you could do is to empower. Are we encouraging the child to have that spiritual connection?
I would just let it be, let them be. What comes to mind is we used to get the odd time with like, oh, my child's having nightmares or things like that. And I would advise things like putting rose quartz above the door. Again, we're just fortifying that space, that room, and not having anything that isn't needed as well.
It can be a little bit difficult though, if a child, no matter how old or young, in what ways could we empower that child? Do we ask them to, speak out loud to these spirits if they draw in too close?
I think it's important that the feelings that they're feeling and what they're sensing is validated and not dismissed.
Wow. I think anybody listening to the podcast, and that's just absolutely amazing.
It is, because how many stories have you heard? I could name about 10 that I've read where they've said, I went to the parent and they said, it's in your head, it's this. So some validation can just go, oh, it is. And I know a lot of wonderful parents who connect with us here at the Purple Mountain that have children who connect with spirit and very open, and they very much acknowledge that, validate them, talk about it, and that's really settles things, and it's on with life. It's not this problem.
It's not a taboo, is it?
Yeah.
It's something that is very natural and it's beyond. It's nothing to do with religion or anything like that. And I know everybody interprets spirit in their own unique and special way. But just a couple more questions before we come to a close to this amazing podcast is a little bit about dream states, because we talk a little bit about spirit disturbances that can happen, particularly at night. And why do spirit take opportunity to draw close to us in our dream state? Is it because we're not listening during the day, and that's an opportunity?
As I said it before, we were shutting down, aren't we? So it allows us to lift to a deeper vibration within our body. We're going deeper, we're settling, relaxing, going off into that dream state, where we're opening up, and that allows astral travel, dreams where we can. Where we're unlocking some of the things within ourselves. It's interesting because as we're coming to a close, I do want to get in. I feel the need to add about sleep paralysis.
That's amazing. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
That's something that's talked about a lot. And for me, I'm just going to give my experience and take on it. And it is, for me, when we travel, astral travel, and as individuals, we still can travel very far. We're very adventurous, some of us.
We are.
And quite often, lots of people experience sleep paralysis, and it's when you come back into the body very quickly, very suddenly. And so you may wake up and I can't move my eyes, I can't move my body, which is very, very unsettling, to be fair.
I've experienced it, can be quite scary.
And if you do, all I would advise is take some gentle breaths, and it will be fine. It's just you're settling back into your physical body. That's very simple. So you might, while people are in that state, you might hear your name being called out. Now, this is interesting because sometimes people think it's being called in the room, which it can be because you can be aware of what's in the room, but highly likely it's being called from where you were.
Absolutely.
So that's a bit of sleep paralysis for anybody intrigued about that.
So obviously a part of our work here at the Purple Mountain is not just advisement, but prevention.
Yeah.
So you talked very much about the home. So we are what we attract as well. And what's the kind of things what advisement would you give to people that are going to work, who work in a very, maybe are a nurse, are a doctor, are a police officer, and they're delving into these can be very heavy, distorted energies, and they're bringing those energies back, who maybe contribute to that energy disturbance that might happen in the home. What kind of advice would you give these people about in terms of their protection?
Well, yeah, and I've a lot of understanding, particularly those in the healthcare. Some roles in life are easier to leave at the door than the others. I think that's just being honest. You know? But what I would advise is things like, as soon as we come in, if you wear a uniform, change. Have a shower or a bath. You can have a shower and use rose quartz as well. Rub yourself down with rose quartz as you're having that. Have a salt bath. Salt baths are very good. And then just quietly have a moment to yourself or a meditation and say, any energies with me for today that don't belong with me, I'm now going to just send on the way. I'm going to send them back to the earth, and take a nice deep breath. Take your hands right across your body, and you'll actually feel any energies, or even if you've had an argument with a colleague or something, you say, I'm going to leave that now until tomorrow. Or the other way, which is a little bit of an even simpler one, pick up the phone to a friend or somebody and have a bit of a chat about it. Don't harbour things. The harbouring is where the problems begin. Yeah.
A big thing as well, which I think we have to touch upon, is that people will drink alcohol and drugs 100%. As a way to what happens to the frequency of your body then when you
it's lowering your vibrations, and anybody will tell you is you're not going to improve your state with certain things. It's very simple.
And obviously we're not saying this out of any kind of judgment.
Anybody could do what they want, but certain things aren't going to improve your state. For example, even if you've had a rubbish day at work and then you're going to go to somebody's home who's a very emotionally draining person, that's not going to help things anymore, is it, for you? So it's recognizing the importance of your energy. If you do day to day do something that requires a lot of your mental and physical energy, recognize that you need to regenerate. You need your time and solitude as well, or time with around people that are very nourishing and equal relationships, good food and looking after yourself. And sometimes, like we said about the spirit work, switching off. We all need to switch off. It's so important.
We all need to switch off.
But there is, I totally recognise that some things are more challenging than others that way.
And another really good technique as well, Chris, is the importance of grounding.
Yeah, well, that's part of that technique I talked about, grounding as well, which you can do a lot of. This is the thing, we live in a great time for guided meditations. You can access them all for free. 10 minutes. What's 10 minutes? So you might come in and go, oh, it's been a long day. What is 10 minutes of your time? Probably spend longer in the shower, So it's like, take that 10 minutes. It will be so valuable. It's like you say, Stephen, with sleep. We can be there like tossing and turning all night for hours, when if you got out of bed or sat up in your bed and meditated for 10 minutes, it would help you go off.
It's just simple, free, powerful techniques people can use to prevent. Again, going back to, I think the theme of today is a podcast called Energetic Disturbances. Everything's energy.
Yeah.
And you are that frequency.
If you recognize as everything is energy, and keep things to simplicity, bring things back, try not to put things outside of the home, put them on the inside, what is going on, what is happening. And ultimately, number one, remember your home is your sanctuary, it's your castle.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you one final question, Chris, is about portals. And I know that's probably a subject and whole on itself. So if there's a portal that's open, and what are portals? I think that's
portals are just openings where energy can be brought through, can transmit through. Quite often, if people run spiritual circles or groups, portals can be open. That's why it's very important, either in a closing prayer, the closing, that you close that energy down in gratitude to whatever you've worked with as well. But often you can sense points in the house where there might be a portal, and that can be closed through many of the techniques we've used. Also, you can use things like dowsing rods and things like that to locate areas of the house. And it's very simple. You don't have to be a magician. Well, we're all magicians, really. But you can do it, or seek people. Like I said, seek spiritual counsel or advisement, and somebody very authentic will pass the advice on. That's what I feel. It's too easy it's too temporary to dive in.
Yeah.
But I want to be very clear on that, and I'll mention it a few times. Empowering you, but where very important is you're not on your own either. So reach out for help, reach out for advisement. I don't mind anybody messaging me saying this is going on. I'll send them the advice. I'll sit with it.
But the best thing to do is to empower yourself to step in your power
and keep up the practice. Even if you've sorted something, keep the practice up.
Prevention.
Keep the practice up, because you're going to feel the benefit of that in the home.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for giving me your insight, your knowledge, your teachings, things that you wanted to share. And on behalf of myself and Chris, thank you very much.